Captain Jake Morrison stared at the massive alien ship through the viewport of the UES Ranger. The vessel was 3 times larger than anything humanity had ever built, its dark metal hull covered in strange markings that seemed to glow with their own light. Jake had been exploring space for 2 years since Earth developed faster-than-light travel, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The alien ship hung motionless in space near Alpha Centauri, waiting. Jake knew they were being watched. His communications officer, Lieutenant Sam Davis, had been trying to establish contact for the past hour with no success. The silence felt heavy and threatening. "Captain, I'm getting something," Sam said suddenly. His voice was tight with worry. The main screen flickered to life, showing a creature that made Jake's blood run cold. The alien was tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin that looked like black leather. Its eyes were bright red, and when it spoke, its voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. "I am War Commander Vextar of the Harvek Dominion," the creature said. Its words came through the translator perfectly, which somehow made everything worse. "You are primitive carbon-based life forms from the 3rd planet of this system. Your species is weak and worthless." Jake stepped forward, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm Captain Morrison of Earth. We come in peace and hope to establish friendly relations with your people." The alien creature made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was cold and cruel. "Peace is for equals. You are insects. The Harvek Dominion has conquered 847 star systems. We have destroyed countless species that dared to resist us. Your Earth will be our 848th victory." "Lieutenant." Commander Ryan Blake, Jake's tactical officer, was recording everything. Ryan was young but smart, and Jake could see him studying the alien ship's design through the scanner readings. Ryan had always been good at spotting patterns, and Jake hoped he was seeing something useful now. "You have 30 of your planet's rotations to surrender," Vextar continued. "Submit to Harvek rule, and some of your species may survive as workers. Resist, and we will turn your world into ash and dust. This is the only warning you will receive." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Ranger in silence. Jake felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Humanity had just made first contact with an alien species, and it was a species that wanted to destroy them. "Captain," Ryan said quietly, "I noticed something about their ship. The way it moves, the formation they're holding. It's very rigid, very predictable, like they follow exact rules for everything they do." Jake nodded, filing that information away. It might be important later. "Sam, send a priority message to Earth Command. Tell them we've made contact with a hostile alien empire called the Harvek Dominion. Include everything we just saw and heard." As the Ranger began its journey back to Earth, Jake couldn't stop thinking about the aliens' words. 847 conquered systems. How many billions of lives had been lost to these creatures? How many civilizations had been wiped out completely? 3 days later, Jake stood in the briefing room at Earth Command, facing Admiral Lisa Carter and the top military leaders of humanity. The room was packed with generals, scientists, and politicians, all looking worried and scared. "So they think we're primitive," Admiral Carter said after Jake finished his report. She was a tough woman who had fought in the Mars Rebellion 20 years ago. "That might be our only advantage." General Pete Hawkins, the head of Earth's military forces, shook his head. "How can being primitive be an advantage? They have technology. We can't even understand. Their ships are massive. They've conquered almost 1,000 worlds." Dr. Amy Rodriguez, Earth's best expert on alien life, had been studying the recordings of Vextar. "There's something else," she said. "The way he spoke, the exact words he used. It sounded rehearsed, like he was following a script. Maybe they approach every new species the same way." Jake remembered Ryan's observation about the rigid formation. "My tactical officer noticed they seemed to follow very strict patterns. Their ship movement was predictable." Admiral Carter stood up and walked to the large screen showing Earth. 30 days, she said. In 30 days, they'll come to destroy our world. We have the most powerful military in human history, but compared to them, we're still using sticks and stones. The room fell silent. Everyone knew the odds were hopeless. The Harvick had conquered 847 civilizations with advanced technology. Earth had just learned to travel between stars a few years ago. But Jake saw something in Admiral Carter's eyes that gave him hope. She wasn't giving up. She was thinking, planning, looking for a way to win an impossible fight. We can't beat them with strength, she said finally. But maybe we don't have to. They've won the same way 847 times. That means they think they know everything about war. Maybe it's time someone taught them something new. War Marshal Zexthak reviewed the report from Vextar with growing boredom. Another primitive species discovered, another easy conquest ahead. The humans of Earth appeared to be exactly like hundreds of other carbon-based life forms the Harvick had encountered over 3,000 years of expansion. Single-planet civilization, he read aloud to his aide. Chemical propulsion rockets, no defensive satellites, no energy shields, no plasma weapons. He set the report aside with disgust. Why do these inferior species always waste our time with their pathetic resistance? His aide, a younger Harvick named Kralvin, made a respectful gesture. Should we assign a full battle fleet, War Marshal? Zexthak laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through his command chamber. For insects, send Battle Group Talon 7. 50 ships should be more than enough to cleanse this system. Commander Dexmore can handle this routine extermination. On Earth, the 30-day deadline was approaching fast. Every nation on the planet had united under a single command structure for the first time in human history. Admiral Carter now led the combined forces of every military on Earth. But even with all their resources, humanity seemed hopelessly outmatched. General Hawkins had worked day and night to prepare Earth's defenses. We have 200 ships that can reach space, he reported to the Emergency Council. Most of them are cargo vessels we've fitted with weapons. Our best warships are no match for a single Harvick vessel. Dr. Rodriguez had been studying every piece of information they had about the Harvick. I've analyzed their communication patterns and cultural references, she said. They're incredibly rigid in their thinking. Everything follows predetermined protocols. They have specific responses for specific situations, but I don't think they know how to improvise. Captain Morrison had been working with Ryan Blake to develop new tactics. Ryan had become obsessed with the idea that the Harvick's greatest strength might also be their greatest weakness. Look at this, Ryan said, showing holographic displays of Harvick battle formations from their historical records. Every single engagement follows the same basic pattern. They approach in formation, demand surrender, then attack with overwhelming force. They win because they have better technology and more ships. But what if someone didn't fight them the way they expect? Morrison asked. Ryan smiled for the first time in weeks. Then they might not know what to do. Admiral Carter listened to their proposal with growing interest. It was crazy, dangerous, and probably suicidal. It was also the only plan that gave humanity any chance at all. You want to hide our ships in the asteroid belt, she said. Make them look like space junk, then attack from directions they won't expect. More than that, Morrison explained. We don't try to match their firepower. We don't even try to fight fair. We do everything they've never seen before. General Hawkins was skeptical. This goes against every principle of military strategy. You're talking about hit-and-run attacks, deception, terrorism. I'm talking about survival, Morrison replied. They expect us to line up our ships and fight like civilized warriors. What if we don't? Dr. Rodriguez had been thinking about the psychological aspects. The Harvick have never lost a battle in 3,000 years. They don't know what defeat feels like. They don't have backup plans for failure because they've never needed them. Admiral Carter made her decision. We have 2 weeks before they arrive. Every ship captain gets trained in the new tactics. We scatter our forces throughout the solar system. When the Harvek come expecting a traditional battle, we give them something they've never seen before. Commander Sarah Phillips took charge of training the Ghost Squadrons. Her job was to teach cargo ship captains how to fight like pirates. Forget everything you know about space combat, she told them. We're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to survive an unfair one. Captain Jack Torres was put in command of the Suicide Squadron, ships loaded with nuclear weapons and piloted by volunteers. Your job isn't to come back, Admiral Carter told them bluntly. Your job is to make sure the Harvek remember this battle for the rest of their lives. As the deadline approached, Earth transformed into a fortress, but it wasn't the kind of fortress the Harvek expected. Instead of building massive defensive structures, humanity scattered into the darkness of space. Ships hid among asteroids. Weapons platforms disguised themselves as satellites. Nuclear mines floated silently in the void, waiting. Colonel Steve Murphy coined the term that would define humanity's strategy: mosquito warfare. We can't kill an elephant in a fair fight, he explained, but 1,000 mosquito bites can drive an elephant insane. The last week before the invasion, Captain Morrison received a final message from Admiral Carter. Remember, we're not trying to defeat the greatest military force in galactic history. We're just trying to show them that not every species fights the way they expect. If we can do that, maybe we can buy Earth enough time to find a better solution. Morrison looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, the Harvek battle fleet was approaching. 50 ships crewed by warriors who had never known defeat, coming to destroy a world they saw as beneath their notice. But the Harvek had made one crucial mistake. They thought they knew everything about war. They were about to learn that humanity had been fighting wars for thousands of years, and humans had always been very good at finding new ways to kill their enemies. The Harvek battle fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system in perfect formation. Commander Dexmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. 50 vessels arranged in the traditional Sword of Dominion pattern, each ship knowing its exact position and role. Begin standard approach, he ordered. Deploy sensor sweeps, locate all military installations, and prepare targeting solutions. His sensor officer, Veltar, worked quickly at his station. Commander, I'm detecting 200 small vessels scattered throughout the system. Most appear to be civilian cargo ships. No sign of organized military formation. Dexmore nodded with approval. This was exactly what he had expected from a primitive species. No discipline, no strategy, just panic and confusion. Begin the cleansing protocol. Target the largest concentrations first. Hidden in the asteroid belt, Captain Morrison watched the Harvek fleet through passive sensors. The alien ships moved with mechanical precision, following patterns that Ryan Blake had predicted almost perfectly. Morrison activated his communication system, sending coded signals to the Ghost Squadrons positioned throughout the solar system. All units, this is Ghost Leader, he whispered into his microphone. Enemy is deployed in standard formation. Execute Plan Chaos in 30 seconds. On Earth, Admiral Carter watched the battle displays with growing tension. Everything depended on the next few minutes. If the Harvek adapted quickly to human tactics, Earth would be destroyed within hours. If they didn't, humanity might have a chance. Commander Dexmore was about to give the order to fire when his communication officer received an unexpected signal. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the human homeworld. Put it on screen, Dexmore said with amusement. He enjoyed hearing the final pleas of doomed species. Admiral Carter appeared on the main display, wearing her full military uniform. She looked directly at Dexmore with calm determination. I am Admiral Carter of Earth Defense Command. You have entered our system without permission and threatened our world. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Dexmore laughed along. with his crew. The idea that these primitives could threaten the Harvek was absurd. "Human Admiral, you are about to witness the power of the Iron Talon fleet. Your species will be extinct within one rotation of your planet." "You're probably right," Carter replied. "But you made one mistake." What mistake could primitives possibly identify in Harvek strategy? Carter smiled coldly. "You assumed we would fight fair." The transmission ended, and at that exact moment, Commander Sarah Phillips led the first wave of attacks. Her squadron had been hiding behind a large asteroid, their ships disguised as mining equipment. Now they burst into open space, racing toward the Harvek formation at maximum speed. But instead of attacking the Harvek ships directly, they targeted something the aliens had never seen attacked before, their communication arrays. Phillips had studied the Harvek formation and realized it depended entirely on constant coordination between vessels. Cut the communications, and the perfect formation would become 50 isolated ships. "Target their sensor dishes and communication towers," she ordered her pilots. "Don't worry about their armor or weapons. Just blind them and make them deaf." The human fighters were much smaller and faster than Harvek vessels. They darted between the alien ships like insects, firing precisely at communication equipment, while avoiding the powerful energy weapons trying to destroy them. Commander Dexmore watched in confusion as his fleet's coordination began to break down. Ship captains were suddenly cut off from Central Command, unable to receive orders or coordinate their attacks. This had never happened in 847 previous conquests. "Restore communications immediately," he shouted at his technical crew. But the humans had done their work well. Each communication array required hours to repair, time the Harvek did not have. From another direction, Captain Jack Torres led the Suicide Squadron in their attack. His ships looked like civilian cargo vessels, exactly the kind of targets the Harvek expected to destroy easily. Torres let them think that right up until the moment he crashed his ship directly into the hangar bay of Dexmore's flagship. The nuclear explosion that followed lit up space like a miniature sun. Torres and his crew died instantly, but they took 300 Harvek warriors with them, including Commander Dexmore himself. The flagship's destruction sent shock waves through the alien fleet. Without their commander and without communications, the Harvek formation began to collapse. Individual ship captains tried to follow standard protocols, but those protocols assumed coordinated fleet action. When each ship acted independently, they began interfering with each other's movements. Colonel Murphy led the next phase of the attack. His Ghost Squadron had been hiding among the outer asteroids, waiting for this moment. Now they struck at Harvek ships that were isolated and confused, using hit-and-run tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. "Remember," Murphy told his pilots, "we're not trying to destroy them in fair combat. We're trying to drive them insane, attack from impossible angles, disappear before they can respond. Make them afraid of shadows." The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The Harvek, masters of conventional warfare, found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow any recognizable rules. Human ships appeared from nowhere, struck quickly, and vanished before the Harvek could respond effectively. Dr. Rodriguez had been right about Harvek psychology. After 3,000 years of easy victories, they had no experience dealing with unexpected tactics. When their standard responses failed, they had no backup plans. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, all 50 Harvek ships had been destroyed or crippled. The cost to humanity was severe. Nearly half of Earth's space fleet was gone, but they had achieved the impossible. For the first time in 3 millennia, a Harvek battle fleet had been completely defeated. Admiral Carter stood in the command center, looking at the tactical display showing debris from 50 alien warships. Around her, military officers were cheering and celebrating, but Carter knew this was only the beginning. "Send a message to all human colonies," she ordered. "Tell them we won the first battle, but the war has just started. The Harvek will come, back with more ships, and they'll be ready for our tricks next time. Captain Morrison, who had survived the battle in his damaged ship, received Carter's final message of the day. Jake, what we did today will echo across the galaxy. We proved that the Harvek can be beaten. Now we need to prepare for their real response. Supreme Admiral Krexval stared at the empty tactical display where Battle Group Talon 7 should have been reporting their victory. For the first time in his 800-year military career, a Harvek battle fleet had been completely destroyed. The concept was so alien to him that he kept checking the data, hoping to find some mistake. "Confirm the reports," he ordered his intelligence officer for the 10th time. 50 ships cannot simply vanish. "The data is accurate, Supreme Admiral," the officer replied nervously. "All vessels of Battle Group Talon 7 have been destroyed. No survivors have been recovered." Krexval's 4 hands clenched into fists. The Harvek Empire had conquered 847 star systems through overwhelming force and perfect tactical execution. Their military doctrine was based on 3,000 years of unbroken victory. This defeat was not just impossible, it was unthinkable. "How?" he demanded. "The humans possess primitive technology. Their ships are inferior in every way. How did insects destroy trained Harvek warriors? The intelligence reports made no sense. The humans had used tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They had hidden among asteroids, attacked communication systems instead of weapons, and used suicide attacks against superior forces. It was dishonorable, cowardly, and completely effective." Word of the impossible defeat began to spread across the galaxy with the speed of hyperspace communication. On 847 conquered worlds, enslaved populations whispered the news in secret. For the first time in millennia, someone had beaten the Harvek. On the mining world of Kethros Prime, former engineer Zara Kethmal heard the news from a smuggler who traded with independent worlds. The Kethrans had been enslaved for 4 centuries, their beautiful civilization reduced to labor camps and resource extraction. But now, for the first time since the conquest, Zara felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. "Humans," she whispered to her work partner as they broke rocks in the deep mines. "A species called humans destroyed an entire Harvek battle fleet." The news spread through the slave population like wildfire. Within days, secret meetings were being held in abandoned mine shafts. Resistance cells that had been dormant for decades began to organize again. On Earth, Admiral Carter was preparing for the inevitable retaliation. She knew the Harvek would not make the same mistake twice. Next time they would come with overwhelming force, and they would be ready for human tactics. Colonel Danny Foster had been working with captured Harvek technology, trying to understand their weapons and defenses. "They're incredibly advanced," he reported to the military council. "But their technology is standardized. Every ship has the same basic design, the same weapon systems, the same defensive capabilities." Dr. Rodriguez had made an important discovery while studying Harvek psychological profiles. "They literally cannot think creatively," she explained. "Their entire species has been conditioned for military discipline and following orders. Individual initiative is considered a mental disorder in their culture." This information gave Admiral Carter an idea. If the Harvek could not adapt or improvise, then humanity's best strategy was to become as unpredictable as possible. She began developing what she called the Chaos Doctrine, the systematic use of randomness as a military weapon. Captain Morrison was put in charge of establishing contact with alien resistance movements. His first success came when a Kethran smuggler named Vectar contacted Earth through secret communication channels. "My people have detailed knowledge of Harvek fleet movements and supply lines," Vectar explained through the encrypted link. "We have been mapping their empire for 400 years, waiting for someone strong enough to challenge them." Lieutenant Kate Johnson, Earth's new specialist in psychological warfare, began developing terror tactics specifically designed to exploit Harvek mental weaknesses. "They've never experienced fear in battle," she explained to her team. "They don't know how to deal with uncertainty or chaos. We can use that against them." The alliance between humans and Kethrans grew quickly. The Kethrans provided intelligence about Harvek military installations, supply routes, and fleet deployments. In return, humans shared their chaotic tactical doctrines and unconventional weapons designs. On Kethros Prime, Zara led her people in the first successful rebellion in 4 centuries. Using human-style guerrilla tactics, the Kethran resistance destroyed 3 Harvek garrison bases in a single night. The aliens had no protocols for dealing with coordinated civilian uprisings. Similar rebellions began on dozens of other worlds. The news of human victory had shattered the myth of Harvek invincibility, and enslaved populations everywhere began to believe that freedom was possible. Supreme Admiral Krexval found himself fighting on multiple fronts for the first time in Harvek history. Rebellions were draining military resources that should have been used to crush humanity. His advisors recommended immediate deployment of their entire fleet to Earth's system. "We cannot allow this infection to spread," his chief strategist argued. "If more species begin to resist, the Empire itself could collapse." But Krexval was learning to fear human unpredictability. His intelligence reports showed that Earth's military was growing stronger and more chaotic every day. They were building ships with no standard design, training tactics that followed no recognizable patterns, and forming alliances with species the Harvek had considered permanently pacified. Admiral Carter received daily reports of new rebellions across Harvek space. Each successful uprising proved that the Empire's control was not as absolute as it appeared. The Kethrans had shared a crucial piece of information. The Harvek Empire was much weaker than it looked. "They rule through fear and the illusion of invincibility," Vektar explained during a secret meeting. "Their actual military forces are spread thin across 800 systems. They maintain control because no one has ever successfully resisted them before." Captain Morrison began coordinating with resistance movements on 50 different worlds. Human tactical advisors, transmitted through quantum communication links, taught alien rebels how to fight using chaos doctrine. The results were devastating for Harvek control. Dr. Rodriguez made another important discovery about Harvek psychology. "They're experiencing something they've never felt before. Doubt," she reported. "Their entire worldview is based on absolute superiority. Every successful rebellion, every tactical defeat, undermines their fundamental beliefs about themselves." As rebellions spread across the galaxy, Admiral Carter realized that humanity had started something much bigger than a war for Earth's survival. They had begun a galactic revolution that would either free 847 enslaved worlds or result in the complete destruction of every species that dared to resist. "We can't stop now," she told the Earth Defense Council. "The Harvek will come for us with everything they have, but they'll also be fighting rebellions on hundreds of worlds. For the first time in their history, they'll be fighting a war they might actually lose." Supreme Admiral Krexval assembled the largest fleet in Harvek history. 50,000 warships gathered at the edge of Harvek space, their dark hulls blotting out the stars. This armada represented nearly half of the Empire's total military. Strength pulled from garrison duties across 800 conquered worlds. "The human infection ends now," Krexval declared to his assembled commanders. "We will crush their homeworld and then spend the next century re-establishing order across our empire." But as the massive fleet prepared for hyperspace jump, reports continued arriving of new rebellions. The Zephyrian crystal miners had destroyed their production facilities. The aquatic Velthari had sabotaged underwater cities on 12 ocean worlds. The robotic Makani had reprogrammed themselves and turned against their Harvek overseers. Each rebellion used the same chaotic tactics that humans had pioneered. No standard battle formations, no predictable strategies, no honorable combat. The Harvek military doctrine, perfected over 3 millennia, was useless against enemies who refused to fight fair. On Earth, Captain Morrison now commanded a fleet of 200 human vessels, but these were unlike any ships ever built. Each one was unique in design and capability, following Admiral Carter's Chaos Doctrine. Some looked like asteroids, others resembled Harvek vessels, and a few appeared to be nothing more than space junk held together with hope. "Remember," Morrison told his ship captains during their final briefing, "we're not trying to defeat 50,000 ships in direct combat. We're trying to drive them insane with confusion and fear." Major Lisa Chen had perfected what she called ghost protocols. Her ships could appear and disappear from enemy sensors at will, using a combination of stealth technology and misdirection that the Harvek could not counter. "They expect to find us where their scanners say we are," she explained, "but their scanners are about to start lying." Commander Rick Barnes led the pack hunting squadrons, groups of ships that maintained radio silence and communicated through predetermined movement patterns. The Harvek had never encountered coordinated attacks that left no electronic signature to trace or counter. Dr. Rodriguez had been working with alien resistance leaders to develop new psychological warfare techniques. "The Harvek have no experience with guerrilla warfare," she reported. "They've never had to deal with enemies who strike and vanish, who attack supply lines instead of military targets, who turn their own technology against them." The war began not with a massive battle, but with 1,000 small cuts. Human ships struck at Harvek supply convoys, destroyed communication relays, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Kethran rebels sabotaged mining operations that supplied the Harvek fleet with fuel and ammunition. Velthari resistance fighters attacked underwater installations that provided the Empire with rare materials. Supreme Admiral Krexval found himself commanding the largest military force in galactic history, but he could not bring that force to bear against enemies he could not find or predict. Every time his fleet responded to a human attack, they found empty space. Every time they thought they had cornered human forces, they were ambushed from unexpected directions. "How can insects vanish and reappear at will?" he demanded of his science officers. "How can primitive ships move faster than our sensors can track?" The answer was simple but incomprehensible to the Harvek mind. Humans were not trying to win a conventional war. They were waging chaos itself as a weapon. Captain Torres, who had survived his suicide mission by ejecting at the last second, now led the 7th Ghost Squadron in increasingly daring raids. His ships would appear inside Harvek formations, attack from point-blank range, and disappear before the aliens could respond. "The trick is not being where they think you are," he explained to new pilots. "The Harvek calculate probable attack vectors and prepare defenses accordingly. So we attack from impossible vectors that their computers say cannot exist." Lieutenant Johnson's psychological warfare campaign was having devastating effects on Harvek morale. Her teams broadcast messages across all Harvek communication frequencies, showing footage of their commanders panicking and arguing. The image of Harvek invincibility crumbled as their own soldiers watched their leaders display fear and confusion. On conquered worlds throughout the galaxy, the sight of Harvek uncertainty sparked new waves of rebellion. Species that had been enslaved for centuries suddenly remembered what freedom felt like. The empire that had ruled through absolute control found itself fighting uprisings on hundreds of worlds simultaneously. Colonel Foster had established training camps on liberated worlds, teaching alien rebels human-style chaos tactics. "Forget everything you know about military strategy," he told a group of Zephyrian crystal warriors. "War is not about honor or glory. War is about winning by any means necessary." The Harvek tried to adapt. They developed new sensor technologies. To track human ships, they created countermeasures for stealth attacks. They modified their communication systems to resist jamming. But for every adaptation they made, humans and their allies developed 3 new tactics: Supreme Admiral Krexval began to understand a terrible truth. The Harvek Empire had grown powerful by fighting enemies who followed predictable patterns. Humans did not follow any patterns at all. They were chaos given form, unpredictability made manifest. They attack our supply lines instead of our warships, he reported to the High Command. They target our communication networks instead of our weapons. They strike at our morale instead of our defenses. How do we fight an enemy that refuses to engage us in proper combat? The war reached its turning point during the Battle of Proxima Station, a major Harvek supply depot. Morrison led a coordinated attack involving human ships, Kethran saboteurs, and Velthari hackers. Instead of trying to capture or destroy the station, they reprogrammed its automated defenses to attack Harvek ships. For 6 hours, the most advanced military installation in Harvek space fired on its own fleet while human forces broadcast the battle across the galaxy. The message was clear. The Harvek were no longer invincible. They could be beaten, confused, and humiliated. Across 847 conquered worlds, enslaved populations watched their masters flee in panic from a supply station that had turned against them. The symbol of Harvek technological superiority had become a weapon in rebel hands. Admiral Carter received reports that the Harvek fleet was beginning to fragment. Some commanders were demanding immediate withdrawal to protect their home systems. Others insisted on pressing the attack against Earth. The unity that had made the Harvek unstoppable for 3,000 years was cracking under the pressure of fighting an incomprehensible enemy. They're learning what every human general has, known for millennia, Carter told her staff. No battle plan survives contact with the enemy. The difference is we've always known how to adapt. They never had to learn. Supreme Admiral Krexval made a desperate decision that would either save the Harvek Empire or destroy it completely. He recalled every available ship from across the galaxy, abandoning conquered worlds to create the largest defensive fleet in galactic history. 400,000 vessels surrounded the Harvek homeworld of Dominator's crown in a sphere of dark metal and deadly weapons. No force in the universe can penetrate this defense, he declared to his remaining commanders. Many of his best officers had died in the Chaos Wars, replaced by younger Harvek who had never known certain victory. The humans and their allies will break themselves against our ultimate formation. The withdrawal from conquered worlds triggered massive rebellions across the galaxy. Without Harvek garrisons to maintain order, 800 systems erupted in revolution simultaneously. But Krexval no longer cared about the Empire. He cared only about preserving the Harvek homeworld and proving that his species was still supreme. Admiral Carter studied the intelligence reports with growing amazement. The Harvek had created an impenetrable fortress around their most important world, but in doing so, they had essentially surrendered the rest of their empire. The defensive sphere contained more firepower than humanity had ever faced, but it was also the most rigid, predictable formation the Harvek had ever deployed. They've made themselves strong in one place by becoming weak everywhere else, she told the Emergency Council. But we still can't break through 400,000 ships with conventional tactics. Captain Morrison had been working with Dr. Rodriguez and the alien resistance leaders to develop one final strategy. It was so insane that even Admiral Carter thought it might be impossible. They called it Operation Wildcard, and it would either end the war or end humanity. We don't attack the fleet, Morrison explained to the assembled human and alien commanders. We attack their minds. Lieutenant Johnson had discovered the key weakness in Harvek's psychology during her research. They've never lost because they've never had to imagine defeat, she reported. Their entire culture is built on the idea that they are naturally superior to all other life forms. If we can shatter that belief, their formation won't matter. The plan required perfect coordination between human forces and rebels on 50 different worlds. Dr. Rodriguez would broadcast a message across all Harvek communication frequencies, while Captain Torres led a diversionary attack that would appear to be humanity's final desperate assault. You'll be flying directly into the teeth of their defense, Admiral Carter warned Torres and his volunteer pilots. "Most of you won't survive the first minute of combat." Torres smiled grimly. "Admiral, we've been flying suicide missions since this war started. At least this time we might actually accomplish something impossible." The final battle began with Dr. Rodriguez's broadcast. Speaking in perfect Harvek, she delivered a message that cut to the heart of their racial identity. "Your empire dies not because we are stronger, but because you have forgotten how to think." The transmission included detailed tactical analyses of every major Harvek victory over 3,000 years. Rodriguez had studied their history and found the devastating truth. They had been using the same basic strategies for millennia. The Harvek had not evolved tactically because they had never needed to. "You conquered 847 worlds using variations of 12 fundamental attack patterns," Rodriguez continued. "You are not military geniuses. You are a species that learned one lesson very well and never bothered to learn anything else." Supreme Admiral Krexval tried to shut down the transmission, but human hackers and alien rebels had infiltrated communication systems across the galaxy. The message was being broadcast from thousands of sources simultaneously, impossible to stop or silence. As the psychological assault continued, Torres led 50 human ships in what appeared to be a direct attack on the defensive sphere. The Harvek fleet responded exactly as predicted, maintaining their rigid formation while pouring devastating firepower at the approaching humans. But halfway through the attack, the human ships suddenly scattered in random directions, deploying thousands of small drones. The Harvek prepared for another chaotic assault, but the drones did something completely unexpected. They began to sing. Each drone broadcast a different human song, creating a cacophony of music that overloaded Harvek. Communication systems. The aliens had never encountered sonic warfare because the concept of using art as a weapon was completely alien to their rigid military thinking. Classical symphonies mixed with rock music, folk songs blended with electronic beats, and children's lullabies combined with military marches. The beautiful chaos of human creativity poured across Harvek frequencies, jamming their coordination systems and filling their command channels with incomprehensible noise. In the confusion, the real human fleet struck. 300 ships that had been hiding in nearby nebulae attacked the gaps in the Harvek formation. But these were not the ships the aliens had been tracking. Morrison had created an entirely fictional fleet using sensor ghosts and holographic projections, while the real attack came from directions the Harvek had not even considered. Major Chen led her ghost squadrons through the heart of the defensive sphere, appearing and disappearing like phantoms. Commander Barnes coordinated pack attacks that struck multiple targets simultaneously before vanishing into the cosmic background radiation. But the decisive moment came when Supreme Admiral Krexval himself realized the truth that Dr. Rodriguez had broadcast to the galaxy. Watching his perfect formation dissolve into chaos, seeing his disciplined fleet confused by human music and misdirection, he finally understood what had happened to his empire. The Harvek had not lost because humans were stronger or more advanced. They had lost because humans were impossible to predict. For 3,000 years, the Harvek had fought enemies who followed logical patterns. Humans followed no patterns at all. "Cease firing," Krexval ordered, his voice barely a whisper. "All ships stand down." The command spread through the Harvek fleet, carried by officers who had watched their Supreme Admiral's perfect confidence crumble in real time. For the first time in their species' history, the Harvek acknowledged defeat not through destruction, but through understanding. Admiral. Carter received the surrender message with a mixture of relief and amazement. Humanity had won the impossible war not through superior firepower, but by proving that there was no such thing as an unbeatable enemy. 5 years later, the galaxy had transformed completely. The Harvek Empire was dissolved, replaced by the Galactic Defense Alliance. Former enemies worked together as equals, sharing knowledge and resources for mutual protection. Some Harvek had joined the alliance, learning to think creatively for the first time in their species' evolution. Others had returned to their homeworld to rebuild their society without the need for conquest and domination. Captain Morrison, now exploring the galaxy's rim in search of new civilizations, often thought about the war that had changed everything. Humanity had not won through strength or technology. They had won by refusing to accept that any problem was unsolvable. The age of rigid order was over. The age of creative chaos had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.